I think it's time we talk about Eve, her placement on the tier list, and in my opinion how you should be building her. This is of course as usual our final verdict on the current banner rate up Eve. Beautiful assets, kind of like a letdown for a lot of people. I think a lot of people were expecting a really strong meta character, and we got something that just is strong. But since it's the own IP from Shift Up, I guess they were expecting more. So let's talk a little bit about this. As usual, before we start, hello the internets, welcome back to the Waifus. I'm Sefhi, your favorite gambling addict. Today's topic, if a little bit on where she's running on my account. As you can see, 10-10-10, overload gear, phase 15, purple doll, and then hairlines are 50-50, right? Attack elemental, we got crit ammo elemental, we got ammo, crit attack, and then we got another elemental crit attack. Really good piece right here. I would like to reroll this at some point, but it's expensive and I only have 5 rocks, so we are not doing anything. We're saving for Raven. I have no rocks for Raven, no gear for Raven. It's fucking over, guys. It's absolutely over. So, that said, let's talk a little bit about what's going on with her, in my opinion, how you should be building her, and her placement on the tier list. Leave a like, subscribe, help me grow the channel, and let's start directly with the tier list if you guys want. And let's go to B3 directly. I think that's gonna be easier to see that way. I'm gonna be making this a little bit bigger so you guys don't see my face in the middle of the website. There we go. As usual, you guys can go also directly here to lootandwaifus.com and see everything on your own if you don't like me yapping 10 minutes to the camera, right? That's it. Where is Eve right now? Right there. Beautiful girl. Now, you're thinking, Sefhi, a lot of characters are T1s, T2s. Why are we not getting more T0s, right? But the reality is that it doesn't matter if it's Shift Up's own IP. I believe people expecting a lot of the characters to be Rapid Red Hood or Siren or Crown level, like those characters, right? It's stupid. It makes no fucking sense. It doesn't matter if it's their own IP. First of all, Shift Up doesn't know how to balance their own game. We've seen this time and time again. And then second, that would only mean power creep literally every other month, which is really bad for the game, right? Because we're always getting either seasonal characters or limited characters or pilgrims, it doesn't matter. NIKKE doesn't have downtime. We go from a collaboration into seasonal characters, into a pilgrim, into anniversary or half anniversary, whatever it is. So if every character was to be meta, it would be fucking stupid in my opinion. I think at the current pace we're going, it's a lot better than what we used to get. For some context, the last bad banner we got, like an actual dogshit character, was Flora. That was last year, I believe. That was the last banner we got that is an actual character that most people would consider bad, right? Eve is a character that's on a similar situation, in my opinion, to Breedy. It's a character that will be seeing usage on its own solo raids for that elemental content, or just like Asuka. But outside of Iron, it's gonna be really hard seeing her or slotting her or justifying bringing her into the team for multiple reasons. So let's go a little bit into everything that's going on with her, the skills, the build, the pros, the cons. Starting with the skills. The skills, she is kind of like an expensive girl. You want to be going 10-10-7. You could be taking the burst to 10, but there is no need because this scale by 100%, it's already 100% at level 7. So you don't need to be taking this any higher if you don't want. Also, if you keep it at level 7, you could be using her as an off-burst character because she's going to be dealing decent damage as well that way. But 10-10-7 is more than enough. Skill 1 and 2 are bringing a lot of buffs and you're getting the critical rate 60% on the skill 1, so it's really important, plus the damage taken as well. I will say skill 1 takes priority, then skill 2 and then the rest. But yeah, 10-10-7 for her skills, it's kind of like an expensive girl, honestly. And when it comes to building her gear and everything else, honestly, we talked about this the other day on the first impressions, but she already has a built-in Bastion here on the skill 2. So if you pair this with the Bastion cube itself, you are reloading 6 bullets every 10 shots. That is fantastic. Bastion above every other cube on literally every situation, even outside her own elemental content. Bastion is gonna be better because she is a 1-second reload, which is pretty fast to begin with. Now her gear is where it gets a little bit more tricky. So people are recommending 1 line or no max ammo at all, just because her innate reload is pretty good. So it's like a line or nothing of max ammo, then a couple lines of crit rate if you can, at least 1. I would recommend getting 1 if you can reroll it to be like at least a 6%, right? A blue line. And then the rest you want the usual basic bitch DPS lines, aka elemental, attack, and in this case, finally, also want to be going for critical damage. So this is one of the, not the first character, but one of the first that actually really benefits from getting this. A 60% crit rate plus the 15% crit rate that's base for all characters, it's already fantastic. So that's like a 75. You're getting a good line here. That's already an 80% crit rate, not counting any other buffs from any other character you might have on the team. So she's gonna always be a critting and proccing consistently her skill 1 right here, dealing extra damage and attacking sequentially. So that's what you wanna be building her with crit, and she actually dishes out pretty good damage. For damage comparisons, you can go check my previous video on her, but let's get this out of the way, right? If there are no parts, right, on a boss, if it's really fucking strong, she will be better than Red Hood. If there are parts on the boss, Red Hood will completely destroy Eve, because she can take advantage of a boss regenerating parts and constantly breaking them. This also applies to the daily boss Ultra. So this is a similar situation to Midhara, right? Where on the daily boss, where you would be using her, she's worse than the other 5 characters we have. Now she's better, she's fixed actually, but she's on a similar situation to what was going on with Mihara. And then when there is core, Rappi also will be overall better, because first of all, Rappi damage is right now probably one of the highest, if not the highest DPS in the game, and also she's a machine gun. Highest accuracy in the game, will hit the core consistently, while Eve is an assault rifle, so she has more issues hitting consistently the core. So that's why Rapid Red Hood will be better with the core, and then when there is no core or no parts, Eve is gonna be a better option to be bringing. So in terms of iron, that is the current situation. Now, what about Snow White, Sefhi? If you build Snow White, if you have like a build Snow White and there are parts, she's gonna be better. I never build her because I don't like her, so I'm not gonna be bringing a Snow White. I would rather bring Eve, and she's fully invested and is gonna be doing more damage. So that's like one of the things to take into consideration for her own damage, right? Since people are comparing these 3 girls together. Rapid Red Hood is of course better, and then Red Hood and Eve, depending on the situation, one or the other is gonna be better. If depending if there is parts or core, or no parts or no core. That says, going to the pros a little bit. For the pros, there is a few things that are pretty nice about her. First of all, she's a great damage dealer for bosses without parts and overall iron weak enemies thanks to her passive. And she will also be increasing the damage to everyone in the team because she has a damage taken debuff, which is going to be 100% uptime as long as the enemy is electric. 15% base crit rate plus 60% on skill 1 and make it possible to finally build crit in NIKKE. There's a few characters we were already going for the crit, be it with your Snow White, be it with a couple of the previous girls that were released recently, but now it actually makes sense to reroll your lines and go for crit. This is a cons as well, and we're talking about this in a second. And then the last thing is the assets, because my god, she looks good. She looks like Crown, right? Same pose as Crown, but she has fan service. I'm gonna be honest, Crown on her base skin has no fan service, alright? When you are shooting, there is nothing there. This is 10 out of 10, fantastic. And then when it comes to her cons, there's a couple of things that I think are also worth mentioning and are pretty bad. First of all, if there are parts, you are better off using Red Hood or Snow White or anything you have built that can pierce, because it's gonna be a better option overall, right? The second is that it's hard to slot on campaign at high deficits, because outside of bosses, her skill 1 is hitting random enemies. She's not gonna be good in contrast to just bringing another DPS you can control, or that affects all enemies, or that you can focus your fire whenever you need to, right? Skill 1 affects random enemies, her burst also affects a random enemy, so it's pretty hard to justify slotting her into hard campaign or really big deficits, not only hard campaign, right? And then lastly, it's really expensive to build her. And so it was already expensive enough to be building characters with elemental and damage. But now you have to go elemental damage and crit. So you have to be fishing for 3 perfect lines, and then you need to be min-maxing maybe 1 ammo, maybe 2 crit rates, whatever it is, right? So as we move into more crit characters, the usage of rocks is gonna skyrocket. So hopefully we get another source soon that can allow us to be properly building characters. And this is not because we don't get enough rocks to overload units. We don't get enough rocks to actually reroll, to actually get good results or be lucky, etc. So we'll see what they do. They already said they are planning on improving anomaly interception drops in the future. They said this last patch notes, if I remember correctly, last developer notes, sorry. So we'll see what they do. That said, I'm pretty sure a T1 feels really good for her right now. I think it's a good spot. Again, she feels like Brady, she feels like Fire Asuka, she feels like even Quincy. Characters that are great damage dealers, characters you will not see outside their element, and even on their element, sometimes you don't even see them, right? Not a bad character, but she is not a meta unit. And that said, I also moved down both Rays to T2. I am kind of biased, I just don't like Ray, but at the same time, both of them get no usage unless it's to buff their counterparts, unless it's on a specific race, just as a buffer for Asuka or for the Elemental team, right? So I moved them both to T2. I think I did a couple more changes, but I don't remember right now because my memory is shit. I should probably take notes every time I'm doing changes. But that said, that's gonna be for this video. Honestly, that is where Eve is right now. That is how to build her, in my opinion. Lastly, before we go in terms of if it's worth pulling her or not, I will say it's worth getting one copy, absolutely. This is an abnormal character. We do not know if she's gonna be coming back ever or not. It doesn't matter if it's their own IP, they will find any excuse not to rerun collaborations. So I will say get a copy if you can. Fantastic character, really good fan service. Outside of that, I will not bother going for MLB because it's too expensive. That said, that's gonna be for this video. As usual, we are live every day. Link in the description down below. Do let me know how your pulls were for Eve, and I will see you live later. Good luck with your pool dinner rates, and I'll see you in the next one.